Diabetes Connections is brought to you by the only ultra-rapid-acting inhaled insulin, by Dexcom, keeping you in control with an integrated system for diabetes management, and by Still, the world's worst diabetes mom, winner of the Mom's Choice Award and available on Amazon in paperback and for Kindle.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, new information about Dexcom's G7 launch. CEO Kevin Sayer says it'll be available in the U.S. before the end of March.
We will launch it with a temporary bridging program. It takes a while to get reimbursement, and we've got to go through that contractual process. If you start at Medicare with CMS, that should come by the end of the first quarter, early second quarter. On the commercial payers, with the DME business, that comes very quickly as well.
Kevin joins us from the J.P. Morgan Healthcare Conference in San Francisco. We talk more about that launch. We discuss Dexcom's pump partners. When will the FDA let them put in features they already have in Europe, but not here? And he answers a lot of your questions. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. Always so glad to have you here. I'm your host, Stacey Sims, and you know we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. We are off and running for 2023. Later this week is my Mom's Night Out event in Charlotte. I have heard from moms all over the country and Canada and the UK who want one of these in their town. I have some ideas about that. I am working on it. And if you're listening and you want to hire me to do this, or you want to be a big sponsor of this, let's talk. I've been thrilled at the response, not only from the people coming to this event, but from the diabetes companies who see the importance of reaching these moms. You can see all of that on social media, and I'll post some in the Diabetes Connections Facebook group as well. But, there is just no standalone event in person for moms of kids with diabetes. And we need that support, just like our kids need camp. I maintain that parents of kids with diabetes need support just as much. I'd love to do something for dads as well. But yeah, I've been doing meetups and events in the Charlotte area for, Benny was diagnosed more than 16 years ago. So let's generously say 14 years I've been doing this. And I'm telling you, the moms really need and respond to this. So I'm excited to move forward. I also want to share a story about Benny's insulin pump, my son's insulin pump, and our trip to Vegas over the holidays. But I will do that after the interview. And Kevin Sayer is here to talk Dexcom. As longtime listeners know, Dexcom is a sponsor, but they only pay for the commercial. You will hear later on, they don't pay for the interview, and I get to ask whatever I want, as you'll hear. Quick background for those who don't know, the G7 was approved a few weeks ago. It's been out in Europe since late spring. We have done many, many episodes about this. We have done a deep dive into the features, into exactly what was approved here. You can go to diabetes-connections.com, search for the keyword Dexcom or G7. There is a very easy-to-use search box in the upper right-hand corner. There is a video of this interview on our YouTube channel, but it is the same interview. You can just see us. You can see us get uncomfortable at various points. I hate video. All right, but first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by AFREZZA. Quick biology facts. Did you know your lungs have the surface area of a tennis court? That is interesting, right? But why is it important? Well, since AFREZZA is a powder you inhale, the insulin is delivered through the large surface area of the lungs, which allows for ultra-rapid absorption. The insulin passes through your lungs into your blood in less than 1 minute. Your blood sugar may start to lower in about 12 minutes. That's glucose management in the moment. Find out more and see if AFREZZA is right for you. Go to diabetes-connections.com, click on the AFREZZA logo. AFREZZA can cause serious side effects, including sudden lung problems and low potassium, and is not for patients with chronic lung disease such as asthma or COPD, or for patients allergic to insulin. Tell your doctor if you've ever smoked, ever had kidney or liver problems, a history of lung cancer, or if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. Most common side effects are low blood sugar, cough, and sore throat. Severe low blood sugar can be fatal. Do not replace long-acting insulin with AFREZZA. AFREZZA is not for use to treat diabetic ketoacidosis. Please see full prescribing information, including boxed warning, medication guide, and instructions for use on afrezza.com/safety. Dexcom CEO Kevin Sayer, thanks for joining me. Welcome back to Diabetes Connections. Always good to see you. How are you?
I'm very good. Conference is a very busy place for us. This is one of the busiest weeks of the year.
Tell me a little bit more about this. This is a financial conference. You're not walking around showing the device.
It is interesting. I'll go back a little more in time. A good friend of mine who was on my board at another company, was on the board at MiniMed with us, way back in the day, founded this conference for medtech investors when he was at Hambrecht and Quist, an investment bank that was bought by Chase, which was bought by JP Morgan later on. And it was to gather the medtech industry together. And they set this date and they picked this location in San Francisco more than 30 years ago. And the conference has been here ever since in San Francisco at the same location. And we're all end up being packed in like sardines. But companies, large companies, small companies, a lot of companies have the opportunity to present here. You talk about what's going on, a standard investor presentation. Then we meet with many of our large shareholders. And all of our industry partners are here meeting with people. So it's kind of like medtech paradise, as far as you see everybody. But you're busy 24/7 while you're here.
I asked because, we usually see Dexcom at diabetes conferences, talking more about how it impacts our lives rather than, the financials, which are super important. And I want to ask you a bunch of questions about that too. But to be clear, haven't already heard about the G7 or G6.
I will tell you what we talked about with G7, because it's important that you all and your users and your folks hear this. We did announce we will be launching G7 in the US in the first quarter. When we launch it in the first quarter, we will launch it with a temporary bridging program. It takes a while to get reimbursement, and we've got to go through that contractual process. If you start at Medicare with CMS, that should come by the end of the first quarter, early second quarter. On the commercial payers, with the DME business, that comes very quickly as well. So those patients should have access quickly. The pharmacy channel, with the PBMs and the rebates and things we have to get in place, that will take us a little longer to negotiate. We expect broad coverage by mid-year, but in the meantime, we'll have a temporary bridging program. So for people who want access to G7, they can go buy it at the drugstore for a cash price if they have a prescription. That being said, the big question your group will have is, but is it going to work with my pump? And it won't right out of the gate. It will take a while for Tandem and Insulet to get those integrations done. I actually mistakenly gave dates that were years out instead of quarters at the conference, because when you're up there in front of several hundred people, you occasionally make mistakes. I'm not immune to that. Tandem will be out later this year. They'll give more on their time frames. I think third quarter look would be fine with them, and Insulet will be early next year with G7 integration. But if things go faster at Insulet, that'd be great. If things go faster at Tandem, that'd be great. But their systems will talk to G7 at that period of time. But there's a lot of people on G6 who don't use pumps who can get access to G7 very quickly. And we wanted to launch this thing, giving people access with this bridging program to get the product out there. Those who may not have wanted to try CGM before because of whatever reason, this will give them an opportunity to try what we think is going to just be a fabulous product offering. So there we go.
All right. A couple of questions within that. A couple of years ago, you started talking to me about pharmacy and trying to get more and more people. And, we have that. And I love it just because they do auto refill. I just go to my local CVS and grab it. It's one less thing to think about. How is all of that going? You just talked about people who still have DME.
You know what? It is going very well. 75% of people who have commercial insurance go through the pharmacy now with Dexcom. And 70% of those individuals pay an amount equal to or less than they pay for our biggest competitor. So we have truly honored our commitment to the patient community is trying to make this more accessible from a cost perspective. And in that channel, we still have 25% who go through the durable medical equipment channel. And look, that channel is fine if that's where somebody wants to go. We have good relationships with those companies. Medicare patients have to go through DME right now. They don't have a pharmacy reimbursement code. It's all DME based on CMS regulations. So that channel is important to us too. And we want those patients to have the best experience that they possibly can. And from what we hear, what I hear anecdotally, that has improved as well over the years. So we are working hard to make it easier for people to get product. I've told you many times, the number one complaint I get is never about the product. It's about the hoops people have to jump through to get it sometimes. Yeah. And we've done everything we can to make that easier.
The timeline with pumps, and I know that is a Tandem and Insulet question, but for many people listening to this interview, the timeline you gave is longer than many people had said. And maybe that didn't come from industry. It might have just been the community talking about it. Just to check, has anything changed substantially Or
You know what?
were we just maybe optimistic?
Those timelines are owned by those guys, not us.
Okay.
If they give you a quicker timeline, that's great. I'm being conservative in my words because I don't want to put undue pressure on anybody, but it is up to those companies. And, it's important to note Omnipod 5 has been out how long?
A minute.
How long?
about
Been out a minute,
6 months.
To ask our device companies with these life-saving technologies that are so important to flip really quickly when patient safety is in the balance. We need to be a little thoughtful here. And I think the insulin management team is very thoughtful. I know they're working, I know they're all working very hard, but this is part of understanding this world a little bit. When you go from G6, which was launched in 2018, to G7, which is launched in 2023, these cybersecurity features, the Bluetooth radio features, all of the things that have advanced in technology go into our product. And these guys' products, importantly and justifiably, were designed to communicate with the last one. Well, now we've changed all the rules with the launch. And so we have to be patient. We try and make everything better every time. We try and make everything interoperable. But, interoperable as defined by us is defined different by one company, defined different by another company. And there isn't a set in stone standard. Here's how all you guys make these things work so that they're operable. We all do the best we can. And we do the best we can with the information we have. And we do the best we can based upon all the uses of the product. Because there are a lot of individuals who don't have integrated systems who use the Dexcom G6 product and who use the Dexcom G7 product. So we have to make sure it's secure for them and tough to get into versus wildly open and talking directly to somebody's automated insulin delivery system. It's a balance.
Yeah. As you know, I always ask my listeners for questions to bring to you. And
I know, it's always fun.
One of the top questions this time around was in the US, Dexcom G7 will launch without what we're commonly calling the silence all feature. My European friends say this is one of their absolute favorite features of the G7, where you can tell it, I know I'm high, please be quiet for a little while. And we're not going to get that here. The question was, how is Dexcom working with the FDA? Do we need more studies? Is it a question of just looking at what they already have? Anything you can tell us about that one?
We'll get that feature in a future software upgrade. We went through the review process, and suffice to say, the FDA pushed back on it as a safety issue. And the easiest way or the fastest path to getting the product approved was to take the feature out. As we've had subsequent discussions with the FDA on this feature, they've come back and said, okay, we get it. We get people want it. We get that it's not a safety feature. So give them credit. They've been progressive in their thinking. It created a lot of work for us. It created literally 3 to 4 months of software recoding and validation. But we did it. We took it out. We will now spend time and put it back in because we know the users love it. In the past, I've been running a European app when I wore a G7, and I would absolutely use that feature when I went in a meeting. I'd turn it off for 3 hours, even though I don't really get alerts. You just turn it off because it is a very nice thing to have. But the agency was very, very favorable towards it last time we spoke with them. So we'll get it in the future.
I guess the question on that one is, can you use or will you use the safety information from Europe? I mean, people are walking around using this since it was approved.
We can, and we will submit it, but we don't need it to get it approved. The agency is willing to let us put it back in. It's not a problem.
Any other changes? I have a few more questions that are less about the G7 and the G6 and a little bit more theoretical. Before I move on to those, though, anything that we should look for with G6 is not going anyplace anytime soon with the interoperability, right?
With the interoperability, I even had a guy that my wife and I know really well, who's on G6. He just got on it, sent me a text. He goes, "Why are you doing this? This G6 product is the greatest thing in my life. Do I need the new one?" He goes, "My doctor keeps talking about the new one. Do I need it?" Going back, yeah, you do. It'll be a great experience. Well, one thing I can even show you using the camera. This is my data. We have a new receiver.
Oh, fancy.
And it's really small. You can see the size of my hand. Displays very similarly to the app on the phone. It has been a wonderful win for us in the OUS markets. We often look at this receiver as just an accessory. Nobody's going to use it. In like in Germany, where cybersecurity, they're very concerned about cybersecurity, the receiver is a very important tool. And with our Medicare users, we have to have a receiver for them to get the product. Many of our Medicare users use a receiver as their primary CGM option rather than their phone or an insulin pump. just because. Upgrading that, making this a better experience, I think people are really going to like it. I have had a great experience with it. It's just better in every way than the other one that we had before. So that's a great feature. The app includes time and range data that you used to have to go to Clarity to find, but it's right in the app with G7, and we have that feature. There's more. There are more things you can do with the app. Everybody will find the app real good. The two primary things, well, there's three major messages we hear from existing people who have used CGM before in particular. The 30-minute warm-up is spectacular. I mean, you put the thing on and the app will say you have 27 minutes or you have 28 minutes or you have whatever. Right. You use this thing and use it now and go. And it's warmed up and going, and it goes very quickly. We get many comments about the form factor. It is 60% smaller. It's much smaller than G6 was. And then the last one, just the overall ease of use and getting started. As we expand this market to more and more people get access to CGM, that ease of use thing is critical. And it really is easy to use. I think everybody will find this experience enjoyable. It pairs up pretty fast and it goes. So those are the things we're hearing from our users. It's important for us to execute. We are building inventories so everybody knows. Getting product on the shelf, we don't want to be left without it.
Right. All right, let me stop you. And let me go to some of this more theoretical stuff. Got a really good question from a couple of people, which played off of a comment in my group. As a comment came from an older person who says he really likes that he can raise the volume on the alerts and alarms. And this, because of his hearing. And this led to a discussion about different senses as people get older. And the question came in, I can imagine when Dexcom would produce devices that could be connected to the sensor, where people could have vibrations through perhaps lamps or other products. Is Dexcom working so diabetes management remains available for elderly Dexcom users with possibly diabetes-related impairments? You know, vision, hearing, touch, all of that. All right, talk about that, because I know, and we're going to talk about the type 2 market. We're going to probably run out of time as usual.
Well, that is a wonderful question. And I don't disagree with that question. We look at this. One of the things we did with G7 is we literally threw away the G6 software platform and started over because we wanted to make a platform we could make changes to and adapt more quickly. The Dexcom One product in Europe is a function of the G7 app. They're written on the same platform. We were able to do that very quickly. As we look at needs of people going forward, particularly, for example, you talk about Medicare patients and the recent basal insulin approval, where now anybody with using insulin will be covered by CMS for CGM. We've talked about designing a different app or a different tab in the app. Maybe there's something different somebody would like. So you hit two real good examples, more vibration, or maybe the app is just great big numbers that anybody could see on the phone. And so we are doing user groups and functionality and studying things of that nature. I can't promise you exactly where it's going to go yet, but I think it's important that we create the right experience for the right person. I do believe over time, as we get bigger, as software becomes really a platform and a feature, I think that can be a huge differentiator for us. The vibration stuff is interesting. Are there other things we could talk to? We've looked at examples, and I'll give you a couple of theoretical ones. One that I was very involved with, it actually was a massive failure at Dexcom. Not massive, because we learned a lot. I don't know if you remember this, Stacey. We, with G4, made a cradle to put the receiver in it.
Oh, I have my cradle somewhere. Yes, okay. I remember that. Yeah.
It took us over a year to get the cradle approved. And a week after we got the cradle approved, the FDA approved a receiver that had a Bluetooth chip in it that did the same thing. So we had to throw away all the cradles that I had manufactured, and we never launched the cradle in a big way. But that was a really interesting accessory because we'd never shared data with anybody before, and that was going to be a really good tool. We look at things like night displays possibly, or the vibration stuff is pretty hard because, you know, what device do you put it in and where do you go? Do you have displays on the ceiling? I think another way we can do this as a company, and we're committed to this, is by sharing data with others who might want to pursue this rather than us. We have our API interface. We have live APIs where people can take the signal as long as you're running a Dexcom app. You can go run another app that takes that data live. And we have several relationships of that nature to whereby we could, if somebody wanted to make a vibrating lamp that worked off our data, we could absolutely give them our data and let them do it. We have to choose which opportunities we pursue and which are the most important. And a lot of that gets back to cost benefit analysis. So I do believe, and particularly your user who talked about the older population. Yeah, we will look at things like that going forward. That's a great question.
And it actually leads me to the next question. And I won't apologize, but I will tell you, it's a little snarky. Tim says, why not open up the protocol and allow an official interoperability program that allows open source use of the system without having to pay Dexcom big bucks? Anything not for profit gets to use open source freely. Anything for profit gets Dexcom's lawyers on their back. And here's the snarky part. Tim says, someone might figure out direct for watch for them if they did that. So I bring you that question.
The direct to watch comment, G7 will go direct to watch, not at launch, but not long thereafter. And it's also important for your patient. It's okay that they make those comments. I've wanted direct to watch for a long time. How many devices do you own that can talk to three things at the same time efficiently with Bluetooth? We have designed G7 to be able to talk to three things at once. It could talk to a pump, a phone, and a watch. It can talk to a receiver, a pump, and a phone, or what have you. That is really important. That takes a lot of engineering. In the past, we only spoke with two, and you could talk to your pump and to the phone app at the same time. With G7, ultimately, we'll expand it to three, and we will have direct-to-watch connectivity. But again, that is very complicated because if you enter things on the watch, but you're using the phone as well, and then you charge your watch and your phone becomes your primary source, all those things have to talk to each other and upgrade. This isn't simple engineering. It isn't just making something that talks directly to the watch. It's having something talk directly to the watch, and when those changes are made on the watch, talk to the other devices as well and make sure the changes get there. So this is not a simple problem or as simple as it looks, but it will be done and it will be fixed. G7 will ultimately get there. And with respect to open source, in all fairness, this is a medical device, and we're ultimately responsible for the safety of those who use it. And while you and I can talk, and most of the people we talk to who would want this open source are people who care very much about this and would do in their minds what is great things with it, what happens if they don't? I will share a story with you that nearly made me cringe. I was on Facebook, and I have the Facebook account. My wife has the Instagram account. Somebody instant messengered me and told me a story who had open sourced through one of these AID systems. I won't even say which one. She was told that she could download a food library and it would interact with her AID system, and then she'd have calories so she could do bolus computations. She downloaded the food library into the system, and her open source system assumed she'd consumed every carbohydrate in the food library and emptied her insulin pump into her body. And she spent the night drinking orange juice and then told me how grateful she was she had Dexcom to save her through this. Well, that's great, but what do I do with that comment?
Yeah.
And so we have to keep the safety of people in mind first and foremost. And yes, many people would use open source and it'd be fine, but we'll stick within the rules provided by the FDA and pick our battles for that. We've made very aggressive proposals to the FDA to make our data more accessible to people. And we struggle with that, both them and us, trying to figure out what the right answer is. We're not opposed to doing things of this nature, but we are opposed to issues that can cause, we have to look out for our company in addition to our users.
You know, one of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking earlier about Tandem and Omnipod, and, you know, we had those rumors, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, about Dexcom buying a pump company. Can we just speculate for a minute, or maybe not speculate is the right word. Let's theorize about vertical integration, because you guys you're doing great. You know, the projections are fantastic. G7 is looking good. The type 2 market is out there and it's large. Would you mind taking a moment and talk about the diabetes market in general, as much as you can? We didn't talk about talking about this in advance or anything like that.
Yeah, okay.
But just, you know, it seems to me that when Benny was diagnosed in 2006, there were 6 pump companies that were approved in the United States. Now there are 3. More players keep trying to come in, and there's a few in front of the FDA right now. But it seems to me like it's a very tough industry. Why wouldn't a CGM company that's doing so well buy a pump company or partner with one? Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts?
Sure, and I can talk about what we've done over the years. We started our company way back in the day with multiple partnerships. Our first insulin agreement was signed in 2007, and our Animas agreement was signed around that time too. Animas is no longer here, obviously.
Animas, love them.
But we partnered with companies in the beginning because we were a standalone sensor company. And in all fairness, I was a board member. We knew the difficulty of the insulin pump world. There's a reason there's 3 pump companies left. It's hard. and it has never proven to be wildly profitable. There are profits made, but you can look at Tandem and Insulet's financial statements, and Medtronic, I don't know what they break out of theirs. It's not like you're printing money. It has been a difficult business, and the companies who've chosen to get out of the business got out primarily for economic reasons. It's not that they didn't have great products. It's not that they didn't meet patients' needs. For us, as we look at this world, we've got to continue to position our company for growth and decide who we are and what we're going to be. Our interoperable strategy has worked very well to date. Tandem and Insulet are both going. We have an integration with Ypsomed in Europe as well. They integrate with G6 and they sell some of those pumps as well. And we have a couple other smaller European pump companies that speak with our product. We have others, sitting in front of the FDA that also speak with G6, and others will speak with G7. Our interoperable strategy has served us fine. The majority of our users now are not pumpers. The majority of our users are individuals who are on insulin pens, of insulin users. There are more of those than there are on insulin pumps now, particularly when you look at the OUS population combined.
Sure.
With those in the US, we have to make a product that definitely serves both. We've grown fast enough, and our R&D spend has been big enough, and our infrastructure spend is big enough that it's been all we can do to support what we have. And we still see continued growth on our business. We see an opportunity to expand as a sensing company, to really apply our technology to all of health, not just diabetes. We'll never lose our diabetes focus. This is the group that made us Dexcom, so we'll always be here first, and our product will always be designed first for here. But as we continue to hear stories, I sat down in a meeting in Washington, D.C. not long ago with an individual who wanted to talk to me more about Dexcom, and he said, before we talk, I need to show you a video. It was his mother, and she had great insurance coverage to CGM. She has type 2 diabetes. She's on an SGLT2 and metformin. And she said, for 6 months, I've been on CGM. My A1C's down more than 2 points, and I've lost 25 pounds. I can't thank you enough for what you do. That's a pretty fabulous story. And we know that Dexcom CGM has meaningful application there, and it is a much larger market. We've had similar experiences in prediabetes, and particularly as you look at these weight loss programs that are coming out. As you give somebody an analytic in addition to don't eat so much or exercise more or sleep better or whatever, as they get information that is a pure analytic as to this is what's going on in your metabolism with respect to glucose, better decisions are made, and they can see the effects of their behavior immediately. We really are going to expand down these paths through the connectivity that we've established, through the accuracy that we've established. Our form factor with G7, we believe it's so much smaller and enable us to go better down that path. Our connectivity with the APIs, whereby we can give these companies direct access to our data. We also have software kits where somebody someday will let them just write our software into theirs. These are the market opportunities we're pursuing now as we go forward. CGM use in the hospital. The pregnancy contraindication was dropped for G7. We will soon have a playing field for gestational diabetes. And won't that be fabulous? And provide tremendous benefit. We've got a lot on our plate. There may come a day when we look at integrating with a pen, a pump, what have you, when that makes the most sense for our business. For now, we're very happy with what we do. We have a lot of smart people who analyze stuff like this all the time. And we'll just see where life takes us. But for now, this is who we are, and this is where we tend to go over the next 5 years. All
right. I'm probably out of time. Can I ask you one more thing? You guys tell me.
I'll give you another one, Stacey.
All right. Listen, this is, okay, Kevin. I am all for Dexcom being super successful. I love the product. Obviously, you're a podcast sponsor. I never want you to go away. However, I am not a fan of these metabolistic or whatever they're called. I hope that people find ways to be healthier when they wear a CGM. But when you say Dexcom, we're never going to forget diabetes, but we're moving into health, I really worry about the non-medical need for CGM, people who don't have diabetes. And we're already seeing a lot of people use it, right? There's a lot of, it comes up on my Facebook feed, put this thing in your arm and you can see there's YouTube influencers eating fast food and watching their blood glucose go up when they use a CGM. They don't have diabetes. I'm very concerned about that. I don't know. I don't have a question for you. I just want to kind of go on the record as saying, I'm concerned about that because I'm concerned that a lot of people with diabetes still can't afford all the product and they still can't have access to it. And I know it's your job. It's not your job to only worry about that. Go ahead.
Again, I talked earlier about the progress we've made with respect to access to our product and getting to the pharmacy.
Yeah.
75% of patients there, 70% pay less than they pay at our largest competitor. 30% have a copay of $0. And we have done everything we can to change coverage policies across the board. For Medicare, we've got Medicare approval, and now we got Medicare coverage expanded to get even more people. And Dexcom was wildly instrumental in driving that decision to make CGM accessible to more. We're now in, I want to say 44 or 46 states with Medicaid approval. Not perfect. We have to work with these states to make it better, but we've done everything we can to get this thing out there. And we will continue to do more. We're not going to be irresponsible as we do these things. And if you look at a use case like you're describing, even a type 2 use case, Stacey, I believe that is a different product and a different price point and a different business model. It is going to be a different use of this technology than what we have for diabetes. Quite honestly, if we can go sell another 50 million sensors to other and drive the cost down, you're all going to benefit from that.
Well, that I would like to see. I'll leave you with an idea. And I've suggested this before. You know the shoe company Tom's, where you buy a pair of shoes and they donate a pair of shoes? So if you sell a CGM for somebody without diabetes, type 2, type 1, no diabetes, they just want to find out what happens when they eat a bowl of cereal. Maybe donate a CGM to somebody who's poverty level with diabetes. I give you the idea.
I like good idea. No, all good. I'm not, one of our core values is we listen. I will certainly listen to that. That's not the worst idea I've ever
I know
heard.
it probably doesn't make any sense when I complain about it, but it just rubs me a weird way as a mom of a kid with type 1 and as a wife of a person with type 2 who both use CGM. So Kevin, thank you for joining me. I always take you over time, but I appreciate it very much. We'll talk soon.
We'll talk after our launch. You can tell us how we're doing, okay?
All right. Thanks so much.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Much more information about the G7. Of course, there'll be lots more to come as they get closer to the launch and talking about that bridging program. But I will link it all up at diabetes-connections.com. Every episode has its own homepage there. So if you have any problem clicking on links or finding more information that are in the show notes, if you're listening on a podcast app, you should always head back to the homepage. You know what I was getting at there with the devices meant for people with diabetes, used for people without diabetes. I'm not sure I was very articulate there. And I'll follow up with Kevin in the future. But, Libre has been doing this for a long time with Super Sapiens. There's been a lot of advertising recently. There's a celebrity, can't think of her name. I think she was on Grey's Anatomy. And she's endorsing one of these where you wear the CGM for quote unquote health, not for diabetes, not to dose insulin. We'll get into it in a future episode. But I think you all understood what I was saying. And as I said, not my best moment there, but yeah, you get the point. And I think Kevin did too. And as I say every time, Dexcom is very accessible and they will answer questions. And I'm hoping this year, I'm already hearing from a few more technology companies. We've got some good stuff coming up. I really like trying to bring your questions to the CEO and these chief technical officers. So, hopefully we'll see a lot more of that this year. I do want to tell you about the pump situation we had on our trip to Las Vegas over the holidays. Oh, Benny. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. And I get a lot of questions about Dexcom coverage for people on Medicare. And of course, it's not like you stop needing a CGM the minute you turn 65. The good news is that the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitoring system is covered for Medicare for patients who meet the coverage criteria. If you have either type 1 or type 2 diabetes and intensively manage insulin, you may be covered. To find out more about what that means and if you qualify, check out dexcom.com/G6-Medicare, and that will be in the show notes. You don't have to remember it. You're going to want to talk to your doctor, and you may even be eligible to get your Dexcom supplies at the pharmacy, saving time and money. We do that, and we love it. Learn more at, again, dexcom.com/G6-Medicare. My daughter is finishing up her senior year in college, and she's a geology major. One of the classes she needs it's called something like a field camp. They go out and do, they do geology stuff. I don't know. Don't ask me to explain it. But they usually do it over the summer. Leah had a fantastic internship last summer, and she didn't want to give that up. So she moved it to winter break. Not a problem. None of these classes are offered at her college, so she has to go elsewhere anyway. This one was in Arizona, but the pickup was in Las Vegas. So I said, why don't we all go and we can just drop her off while we're there? We were scheduled to fly out on Christmas Eve, and Benny was trying to shove in a couple more hours of work. He works at a grocery store, and, they pay a little bit more for the holidays. So he wanted to work the day before Christmas Eve, the morning of. He was going to work very early, and then we were just going to pick him up straight from work. He was going to change. We'll go to the airport. Good plan. Well, Friday night, December 23rd, around 11 o'clock, I hear Benny coming down the stairs from his room, and he's like, Mom, take a look at this. And he had shattered the screen of his pump. You may recall that this happened just a few months ago over the summer when he was at camp. But at that time, the pump he shattered was the old one that was out of warranty. We had the new one right there ready to go. We do not have pumps sitting around. I imagine some of you do. We do not. But Slade, my husband, was able to take some of that clear packing tape. The pump was still working. It was just the screen that was shattered. And with mobile bolus or bolus by phone or whatever, he didn't even have to touch it. So Slade wrapped it in tape. Oh my gosh. Of course, we called Tandem and got a replacement pump sent out. But as I said, we were leaving for Las Vegas and it was Christmas. They couldn't have been nicer on Tandem. I got them on the phone immediately. I thought it was going to be a long night. They were super. And they said, nope, the pump will be there day after Christmas. No problem. Phew, big relief. We pack, backup supplies. We always have pen needles with us anyway. But the pump seemed to be working fine and we left it at that. Oh, I should add, I have all my alarms turned off right now with the Dexcom Follow. I do have urgent low, but I've had them all off and I've talked about that previously, but I turned them all back on. Benny and I agreed that if the pump started doing weird stuff, we wanted to know as soon as possible, and I would be a good backup plan for that. So there we go. I left that on for the whole vacation, which I got to admit was kind of weird. Everything went fine. His pump worked fine. He was able to use it. No issues. We get home. Me, being the world's worst diabetes mom, I have now forgotten that he needs to actually replace the pump. It did show up at the hotel, no problems, Monday evening, the 26th of December. That was great, very easy. But he did not switch it out. And I thought he did. I just assumed, haha. So a couple of days later, it's early in the morning, and I hear Benny. In my foggy brain, I'm thinking, is he getting up for school? I don't know what's going on, but it's still winter break. So I walked out there, and he is sitting on the couch with the new pump, looking at the old pump. The old pump finally crapped out. It just said pump malfunction or something like that, alert, don't use me, all that stuff. And Benny was trying to go through his phone because we always keep pictures of the pump settings so he could program it. He was trying not to wake me up, which was very sweet. He doesn't know that at this age, at 18, when he never needs me, I so badly want to be needed. I was so happy. I was like, let me help you. So we looked in my phone because I always take pictures of his pump settings before he goes to camp. But that was back in, late May, early June. And we weren't sure if anything had changed. So I logged on to T-Connect. This is, Tandem's diabetes management software. It always scares the crap out of me because the first thing you see when you log on in giant numbers is your highest CGM reading. And it's like, oh my gosh. But then you get the average and all the other stuff. But it's enormous, the first thing you see there. So that was a little nerve-wracking. But they have all of the settings. Boy, did that make it easy, right? We just clicked on that. He was able to program the pump, go back to bed. It was a piece of cake. I still like the idea of taking cell phone photos of the settings. And I did that. Because, wherever you are, you may not have access to internet or whatever. But gosh, what a long way we have come, right? I was just thinking, we were laughing about it, me and Benny, from the Animas insulin pump, which I loved. But man, there was so much scrolling, right? It was like press, scroll, press. I put the number in. It took forever. And then it would always time out. Oh, just as you were in the middle of something. This was just a much easier process. Now, for those of you asking about the shattered pump, yes, we did go over this after camp, and Type 1 Tactical, which I highly recommend, they are fantastic, sent Benny a free case. And I thought that was amazing. Benny thought it was too bulky. He likes to put it in his pocket still. So he's put that away for the day when he might clip it to his waistband. But it was just not for us. I did message them back to say thanks and maybe we could do something together, do a giveaway. I don't know, but boy, was that nice. I've looked into the tempered glass that's on Amazon, and that looks like it shatters too easily anyway. The edges don't sit exactly right. But Benny's he's going to try to be careful, and we shall see what happens. Huge thanks to Tandem for being just so helpful as always. They got it to us so quickly over the holiday, and they were so nice about it, so easy to work with. Big thanks to the Mirage, where we stayed in Vegas, for getting us our package so quickly. And I say that only because the Mirage is about to become the Hard Rock. So maybe this is a little bit of a time capsule. Last time to see that volcano out there. And ultimately, big thanks to the factory screen protector. which I hope holds up the next time Benny drops the pump. We shall see. Stay tuned. All right. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here on Friday for In the News. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.